05 is 17:30, not 05:30 p.m., and we will get this, it is not, so we will get this meeting called to order. If I could please have a roll call. Are we doing it via automatic? Are we just?
Roll call, I will call roll call.
Okay.
Mr. Blades.
Present.
Mr. Rajaratnam.
Present.
Mr. Heyman.
Present.
Mr. Gorman.
Present.
We have 4 present with Mayor Endicott excused. He is attending LAFCO in person tonight. There is a possibility he will be calling in later on his travels home.
Awesome. We'll note that when he shows up.
Yes, sir.
So do we have any changes to the agenda that we're aware of?
None.
Nope. Okay. And can I call for an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
All right. We will go to our remotes.
I think we're going to have to do roll call. I think we got a slide up there that's wrong. We're going to have to do roll call.
Oh,
All right.
So,
I could leave.
because apparently you're
Say
absent.
no.
I'm just saying, yeah. So that what's on the screen is not accurate, so we'll go ahead and do a roll call. Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
Mr. Gorman.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
The next item on the agenda is the closed session item. It is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9, Anderson v. Lloyd. City of Ridgecrest, Lloyd, Kern County Superior Court, case number BCV TAC 24 TAC 1011979. We will adjourn into closed session and come out right about 6 p.m. Okay, yeah, no problem. So it is 6:03. We will come out of closed session into regular session, and we will begin. If everybody could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Rajaratnam, if you would.
Please join me in prayer if you would. Lord, thank you for giving us this day. Lord, thank you for the blessings you have showered on this community, Lord. Thank you for the growth we see in this community, Lord. I pray for the City Council, Lord. Thank you for the responsibility you have given to us to lead this community, Lord, as we discuss issues which are important to this community. Fill us with your knowledge, with your wisdom, so that we put the interest of the city above any other interest, Lord. Pray for our country. Pray for our troops in harm's way. Protect them from all evil. Lord, bless each one of us here today. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Martin, if you don't mind, the report out of closed session.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council members. One item was taken up in closed session. That's existing litigation, Anderson versus City of Ridgecrest and Officer Lloyd. No reportable actions were taken by the council in closed session.
Thank you. We'll move on to presentations. If I could have the council please join me down at the podium. This is for National Transit Driver Appreciation Day, and then we will move on to the to Kelly's ACFR. Sir. Sir.
While my fellow council members are lining up behind me, I want to point out that when I was a kid riding on a bus in and around Inglewood, California, the bus drivers had this little bubblegum machine next to them as you get in and you drop your token or coins, and it would tumble the coins magically and sort them. I always thought that was so cool. They've graduated, though, in modernity to transit drivers. God bless them. And this is a proclamation from the City of Ridgecrest honoring National Transit Driver Appreciation Day. They do indeed help protect our kids. Whereas transit operators manage to keep a schedule, check fares, give directions, announce and remember stops, and whereas they safely maneuver public transit vehicles through unpredictable traffic and adverse weather conditions, and whereas transit operators transport people to various places that include work sites, schools, shopping and leisure activities, providing citizens from all walks of life with personal mobility and freedom, and whereas the health and safety and comfort of many people in this community greatly depends upon their ability to rely upon the transportation services provided by our transit operators, and almost done. Whereas the efficiency and effectiveness of these qualified and skilled professionals contribute to the quality of life that residents and visitors alike enjoy and rely upon, and whereas transit operators don't have an easy job. They just make it look that way. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Ridgecrest City Council that we recognize and extend appreciation to our dedicated and skilled transit operators, and hereby proclaim March 13, 2025 as Transit Driver Appreciation Day, proclaimed on the 19th day of March 2005, signed by Mayor Travis Endicott and all the rest of the City Council. Is anybody from the transit group going to come up and accept this? So, each of you have to say a 3-minute speech. A stirring 3-minute speech. You got here first. All right. So I hand it to you.
Sounds good. John, do your thing, man.
He talks about a bubblegum thing. I have a blow-up horse from the Wild West days called Flacco, and I took him Christmas on a field trip. The kids were hugging him and everything. I have a blue pig, and then one of the ladies at church says, my daughter was on that bus. That was her first field trip. She was so scared, and you just blew it out of the water for us. So that feels good. Just being me and just loving on the kids.
So most of you guys, I don't know if have ridden public transportation, but first of all, thank you for what you guys do. I got to sit in your guys' seat a couple times dispatching, haven't got to drive. I don't have the endorsement, thank gosh. I don't know with my driving skills that I would be good at that. But I've sat in your seat doing dispatch and doing stuff like that, and it does not go unnoticed what you guys do. We've had some hardships this year with tablets being down, with changeovers in staff, and you guys have navigated through that absolutely greatly. Been a little bit more involved with some of the reporting that we've had to do, and I can't thank you guys enough for all the time and the effort that you guys have put in to getting our transit division to where it is today. So thank you guys very, very much.
Pictures in the middle.
Well, take it away, Kelly, it's all yours.
All right. Nope, sorry. All right. I am on the content slide now, Coley.
Okay, yeah.
Away.
Are you ready for me to just go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, yeah, so my name's Coley Delaney. I am a partner with the Poon Group, and I'm here to present to you the results of the fiscal year 2024 audit. So we're still on the content slide. We're going to be going through just some required communications. I'll touch on management and auditors' audit responsibilities. Do a quick overview of the financial statements, kind of a 30,000 foot level. Go over some financial indicators, and then I will let you know what the audit results. So let's go by next slide, just the header. So Then let's go one more to the required communication, slide 4. So these are required communications by generally accepted auditing standards. So we'll start with independence. So we, as the firm, and all of the individuals that worked on the city's audit complied with all relevant requirements regarding independence. For significant accounting policies, the city disclosed all those accounting policies in Note 1 of the financial statements, and there were no significant GASB pronouncements that had a significant effect on the city's financial reporting during 2024. There are some estimates included in the financial statements, and those include fair value on investments, depreciation on capital assets, the actuarial assumptions, inputs into the calculation of the net pension liability, as well as the net other OPEB liability. So slide 5, continuing on with required communication. So we always know the ACFR is what we call it. It used to be called the CAFR, now it's the ACFR. It's a big document, has lots of pages. So we like to point out in these communications to management and to those charged with governance, sort of, if you're only going to look at a few, of the footnotes, we suggest you start with these ones. So note 1 is the summary of significant accounting policies. Note 10 is risk management. 11 and 12 are the pension and OPEB plans. And note 13 is other required disclosures. And this year, we do have note 16 for prior period adjustments. There were a few prior period adjustments made in the city debt service fund, as well as the TDA Transit Enterprise Fund. We had several corrected and one uncorrected misstatement this period. So the corrected misstatements were those ones that resulted in the prior period adjustments. They were large enough that we had to do a prior period adjustment for those. We did also have one uncorrected misstatement in the general fund, but it was small enough to be immaterial, so we didn't have to correct that. Next slide, slide 6. As far as significant difficulties, we did not have any difficulties in dealing with management, and actually with having Cherie leave the city kind of right in the middle of reporting time. It actually went the transition over to Kelly and her team went very smoothly. So we're happy to say that. We also had no disagreements with management in terms of accounting treatments or audit procedures performed. Right. So on to audit responsibilities. We'll head over to slide 8, which is management's responsibilities. So management is responsible for the financial statements. I know we as the firm, we put them together from documentation provided by the city and the city's audited trial balance, but these are actually the city's financial statements. So management is responsible for the financial statements and for presenting those financial statements in accordance with U.S. GAAP. Management's responsible for adopting sound accounting policies and establishing and maintaining internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. Management's also responsible for providing the auditors with evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in these footnotes. And last but not least, management is also responsible for preventing and detecting fraud. Next slide, slide 9. Auditors' responsibilities. So as the auditors, we are required to perform the audit in conformity with generally accepted auditing standards, and in the city's case, government auditing standards as well. We are required to communicate with those charged with governance, which in this case would be City Council, and so that's what I'm doing right now, and that's why I just did those required communications just a minute ago. We're responsible for assessing risk of internal control over financial reporting and determining the fairness of the presentation of the financial statements. We're responsible for rendering our opinion on those financial statements and issuing recommendations to management if we do have any. Now, I would also point out that we do assess the city's internal controls, but those are essentially for our risk assessment purposes and to help us determine the nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedures that we're going to perform. So we do not actually provide an opinion on the city's internal controls. Okay, so let's get into the brief overview of the financial statement. I'm going to land here on slide 11. Hopefully you all can see that one.
Yes.
So this is just the government-wide statement of net position condensed in condensed form. So we're going to this is the city as a whole in that total column. So it combines the governmental activities and the business type activities. So for this year, the assets for the governmental activities increased by about 18 million over last year, while assets for business type activities fell by about 3 million. So the total city assets increased by about $15 million this year. Liabilities for governmental activities decreased by $2 million, but the liabilities for business type activities increased by $1.2 million. So there was a net decrease of about $800,000 in the city's liabilities. For net position, the biggest piece of that category is net investment in capital assets of 87.8 million, which and that number consists of, the calculation is very easy for the city. It's supposed to be capital assets minus outstanding capital related debt and any leftover cash on hand and then a few other things. However, for the city of Ridgecrest, there is no capital related debt, so that number is just the gross amount of capital assets on your balance sheet. The next is restricted net position, so restricted by third party or enabling legislation. In that we have 9.7 million restricted there, and then of which 5.8 million of that is restricted for capital projects, and the remaining is restricted for special projects or other purposes. And so taking out the net investment in capital assets and restricted, the last category is the unrestricted net position, which is sort of the catch-all after we remove the account for net investment in capital assets and restricted. And so that total unrestricted fund net position is about $46.8 million. All right, so let's go on to slide 12. Similarly, we're staying on the government-wide. This is essentially it's called the statement of activities, but it's essentially the income statement. So governmental activities saw a large decrease in expenses versus 2023. And a lot of this had to do with the CalPERS investment returns realized during the 2023 measurement period, exceeding expectations. Plus, obviously, the city has a large amount of cash in with CalPERS from the bonds that were issued. I believe it was the 2018 COPs issued back a few years back. So the CalPERS investment returns exceeded expectations and caused pension expense actually to fall from $14 million in 2023 to actually pension income for the city of $4 million this year. So that was an $18 million swing, which I think we'll see a little bit of that in a little bit. But let's see. So let's see, where are we at? All right. General revenues, taxes. So taxes, that's going to be your property sales and transit and occupancy. So TOT tax, franchise taxes, and special assessments. The general revenue other line item, that includes investment earnings and gain or loss on sale of property and kind of some just miscellaneous income. There's a net transfer from the business type activities to the governmental activities. And those were mainly for capital projects and debt service. And then business type activities saw its net position fall by 1.5 million, but overall the city saw an increase in net position of $20 million for 2024. So let's go on to slide 13. So now instead of hanging out on the government-wide statements, we're moving down to just the general fund. So this is a condensed balance sheet for the general fund. Assets consist mainly of $25 million of cash and investments, $3 million of taxes receivable, and $3.6 million of due from other funds that was used to cover cash shortages in other funds at June 30. The main liability in the general fund is for advances from other funds for $2.6 million. Deferred inflows are related to one of the newer GASB implementations a few years back for leases, and so those will be amortizing themselves out over the next few years. And then into the fund balance, it's broken up into 5 categories. Non-spendable is the amount that is due from fiduciary funds. That's sort of a longer term receivable, so that we say that one's non-spendable for current for current general fund use. The restricted fund balance, again, restricted by third parties or enabling legislation. And this consists of restrictions for Prop 172 funds. The assigned fund balance of $2 million is for Measure L funds, and just the assignment of these numbers is actually done by the city. So I believe council has delegated that to be to the city manager or finance director to come up with those numbers. But that is assigned, it sort of read as like a reserve, but it's not really restricted by a third party, so it's just kind of set aside by the city. So there's $2 million there for Measure L funds, and then the remaining unassigned, again, similarly to the government-wide, is sort of the catch-all after we account for these other categories. And that that remaining fund balance is unassigned at $25 million, and that's up $13 million from last year. So let's go to slide 14. And so this is staying on the general fund. This is the income statement. The main revenue in the general fund is taxes of $23.6 million, which is up $5 million from 2023. The main expenditure line item is for public safety for $8.5 million, which increased from $7.1 million in 2023. And again, the transfers out are to this in the general fund are to the city debt service fund for $1.1 million, the capital improvement fund for $3.3 million, and gas tax for $1.7 million.
Hey, Coley. The slide we're on, it's marked as 24 on the one you sent me. It says condensed statement of revenues, expenditures, and.
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, that was 14. Yeah, so that's the right one. So we can skip to the next one that says financial indicators.
Okay.
And that's just like the header page, and then we can get to the next one that says net cost of services to tax revenues.
Yes.
You have that one? Okay. Okay, awesome. So this is so again, these are some financial indicators. We started kind of showing the city some of these kind of, before you passed the sales tax measure, the city's general fund was in pretty bad shape. I think it actually had negative fund balance at one point, and we had to add a going concern paragraph into our report that year. So one of the things that we like to show, and we'll get to the general fund in just a second, but so some of these financial indicators. So this one here is just a simple ratio, your tax revenues to your net cost of services. So do you have enough tax revenues to cover your net cost of services? So the net cost of services is calculated as charges for services plus operating and capital grants minus expenses. So in this case, a ratio above 100% is good. It means that the tax revenues are sufficient to cover the net cost of providing services without dipping into net position or relying on investment earnings or miscellaneous income. So as we can see, that ratio has jumped quite a bit from 64% last year to 337% last year. And so this year you see that tax revenues are up by $4 million. The net cost of services dropped drastically year over year, and a big reason for that, or one of the big reasons for that, was that $18 million swing in pension expense that I mentioned a little bit ago. So this year, again, last year a lot of pension expense was bad for a lot of people. Net cost of services was very high. City dipped under 100%, but so you're back over that 100% this year. So in 23, your tax revenues were sufficient to cover your net cost of services. So that is good. All right, let's go to the next slide. It should be general fund unassigned fund balance to annual expenditures.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, and so I know, Kelly, we were actually just talking about this before the meeting a little bit, but so this slide here shows the. So if we remember a couple slides back, unassigned fund balance is not, it's not non-spendable, it's not restricted. This is basically the general fund balance that can be used for anything. And so this ratio is your unassigned fund balance to your annual expenditures, right? And so, and again, yeah, unassigned fund balance is the residual after removing all those other categories. So the unassigned fund balance in the general fund has gone from only $5.4 million in 2021. Again, back in like 1918, something like that. It was negative for 1 year. It was $9.5 million in 2022, up to $13 million in 2023, and now it's at $25 million in 2024. And that ratio of unassigned fund balance to annual expenditures increased from 80% in 2022 to almost 90% in 2023, and it's now at 130%. And so, again, kind of Kelly just piggybacking on what we were talking about a little earlier. So there are some recommendations, as far as how much, there's no rule that says you have to have this much in your unassigned or in your reserves or anything like that. But the Government Finance Officers Association, we call it GFOA, recommends at least 2 months, which is only 17% of annual expenditures. So if you're sitting here right now, you have 130% of annual expenditures. So you've well exceeded what GFOA recommends. And then CSMFO, the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers, they recommend a minimum of about 2 to 4 months, so about 33%. So as you can see, sitting here at 130%, the city is doing really well with their unassigned fund balance in the general fund.
Kelly,
Right,
can I
let's
ask
go.
you a question?
Let's do the next one.
Coley?
This should.
Coley,
Uh-huh.
can you pause for a second?
Yeah.
So is this 12 million is the reserves? Can we take that or no?
Sorry. So the net, that's so there's 12.9 million in unassigned fund balance. And let's see, that was so from prior year, let's see, unassigned fund balance prior year was 12.97. And this year, it's $12 million.
$12 million is the general fund reserve?
That is unassigned. It's unassigned, it's not,
It's actually, that's the change year over year. It's actually almost 25 million.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, that's just residual equity that has no rules or additional strings, whether self-imposed or externally imposed, attached to it. So that's basically, to be spent or to be committed. You can commit some of that. You can assign some of that. Anything you want. It's basically there's no strings. There's no strings on that fund balance. Okay, and then so we go to the pension slide.
yes.
Okay, so this slide here basically I mentioned earlier that there are some actuarial assumptions that go into calculating the city's net pension liability, and so the main one of that is the discount rate that CalPERS uses. So CalPERS uses 6.9% currently. But what this slide shows basically is how the city's how the pension liability can move, how sensitive that pension liability calculation is to a change in the discount rate. And again, CalPERS sets that discount rate. They have lowered them over. They haven't lowered them in a few years, but they have lowered them over the last 5 or 6 years, several times. So we're at 6.9% right now. And so what you read this, that gray highlighted bar in the middle is the city's actual net pension liability. So combining the miscellaneous and the safety plan, you had about $6.2 million with that liability. If CalPERS, so let's say all things being equal, as we're sitting here today, if they had dropped that discount rate down to 5.9%, that liability would magically jump to 17 million. And on the flip side of that, if they were to raise that rate, that discount rate by 1% to 7.9%, you'd actually have a pension asset of $3 million. So we just kind of like to point that out. If anything, CalPERS will not they will not raise that rate. If anything, they would lower it to be more conservative. So just to give you an idea there, but looking at the cities, what we would call the funded percentage. So the miscellaneous plan is almost 93%, and the safety plan is almost 92%. A little bit down from last year due to some other actuarial calculations and stuff, but absolutely great funded percentages for the city. And again, relating back to the fiscal year 19 and the 2018 COPs that were issued, and those proceeds were sent off to CalPERS, and so that's really helping the city with their annual pension expense and with their annual contributions as well. Okay, let's get into audit results. So you should have a header page there, and then the next one that says starts with opinions. Are we there?
Yes.
All right, cool. So, so for our opinions that we included in the ACFR, we gave the city an unmodified opinion to all opinion units. And so that means what you would refer to as a clean audit opinion. What are the opinion units that are included in the ACFR? It's just one book, but we do have multiple opinion units throughout the report. So for us, those include the governmental activities as one opinion unit on its own. The business type activities, these are both on the government-wide statement, are another opinion unit on its own. Each major fund gets its own opinion. So each major fund, and then we kind of take all the rest of it, so not governmental activities, not business type activities, not major funds, so all the non-major funds, fiduciary funds, custodial funds, et cetera, those all get wrapped into one opinion unit called the aggregate remaining fund information. So again, unmodified clean opinions to all those opinion units. And so what that means is that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. The accounting policies have been consistently applied year over year. Estimates used are reasonable, and the disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. We can go to the next slide, and for other results. So again, I mentioned we had no disagreements with management. We did have one material weakness was identified in the internal control over financial reporting, and so we will be including a finding on that, finding 2024-01, which will be included in our federal single audit grant report, which is in draft form right now, but will be issued and submitted to the feds before the end of the month for a prior period adjustment. So I mentioned earlier that we adjusted two funds, the City Debt Service Fund and the TDA Transit Fund. So the City Debt Service Fund, there was a missing cash with fiscal agent account that was in the city's name that had not been previously recorded. So we did an adjustment to bring that one into the books, and then there was like a slight AP issue in the TDA accounts payable in the TDA Transit Fund that was just slightly over materiality that we were sort of compelled to fix. So other than that, there was no accounting issues were noted where there was a lack of authoritative guidance, and no inappropriate activities were noted. We are under governmental auditing standards required to report to those charged with governance, so to council, if we uncover fraud, waste, or abuse, and so we did not note any of those. And so with that concludes my presentation, and I'll open up to questions if you have any. And I'm done.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. So Kelly, you have anything to add on to that before we bring it back to the council?
No.
Okay, thank you. So council, you have any comments or any questions for Coley?
I do have a couple of questions. First of all, I apologize for interrupting you during the presentation. Sorry. I didn't want to miss that point. So going back to that question, so what are our general fund reserves for 2024? Where do I find in this book? We were given this, and I'm not able to follow anything from here to that, so.
So I don't have the copy of the report in front of me, but I could pull it up. But one good place to look is there will be if you go into into the footnotes, there's a classification of fund balances footnote. I want to say it's going to be around like note 13 or so. And so that actually will spell out, and let me try and find I have to go into my
Ron, do you know anything about what our general fund is reserve?
Remember that we're always a year behind
Correct.
in reporting. I know we did have some Measure V projects that went into this year that burnt.
I mean, excluding Measure V and Measure P. I mean, we don't have Measure P in 24 anyway, so.
Yes, we
we
do.
do.
It started,
So
in the
excluding
beginning
Measure V and Measure P, what is our general fund reserve? Can we see anywhere in this book?
For today, we'd have to get a copy of it for you. I'll have Kelly get with you and give you a rundown of the sheet that we have for it.
Okay.
in the ACFR, the general fund includes Measure V and Measure P, so in here, it's not gonna have that broken out, because
Right.
those are both general fund.
Yeah, remember, we have at least 6 million that we've set aside for the pool down payment, Measure P, which would be part of that amount that's included in there. Now, normally when we report out, we don't normally report out Measure P as our general fund reserve, because internally, we don't look at it that way. Same with Measure V. We always assign them as separate general fund amounts, but when it comes to the reporting in the ACFR, it's one and the same, because remember, when we passed the sales tax, they were passed as general fund revenue. And so they'll be trapped as general fund revenue, even though we separate them in P and V. But in the reporting, they're combined for everything. So we'll get you a breakdown of that if we want. We can sit down with you.
I just want, because last year Sherry told it was 13 million for 22, 23.
Correct.
So I want to see where we are compared to last year.
Correct, we can do that for you.
Okay.
But yeah, the 24 million would include V and P, which we separate on our spreadsheet.
Sure,
Because we obviously track V for, police and roads, and then P, the primary accumulation of reserves for that is for the down payment of the pool.
Thank you.
You have anything else, Solomon?
No.
No? Okay. I'd actually like to ask the public if there's any comments. Do you have any comments on the presentation? We normally don't take comments on the presentation, but this is pretty comprehensive. And since we only get it once a year.
Thanks.
Of course.
Yes, Mike Neal. So the statement about unassigned fund balance, could I get a little more detail on what that actually is?
Yeah, you want me to go for that one?
Yeah, Coley, if you don't mind, that would be great.
Yeah, okay, so, so fund balance is the, is equity, right? It's essentially the difference between your assets and your liabilities, right? I mean, it gets a little bit more complicated because there's deferred inflows of resources and deferred outflows of, but essentially assets minus liabilities equals this whole pot for fund balance. Okay, so some of that, GASB, in GASB's statement number 54, has come out with, they came up 5 categories of fund balance, five buckets essentially, for you to put fund balance in, and they define what goes into those. So the first one is non-spendable that we're going to take out. So anything that you have an asset that in the fund that is not going to be converted to cash, or is not going to be converted to cash in a near term. So this would be things like prepaid expenses or supplies inventories and things like that. Those things they're an asset, but when they are consumed, they're just consumed. There's not going to be any cash coming up, so you won't be able to sell those and spend that money, or it's not going to turn into fund balance in the future. So in this case, the amount in non-spendable for the general fund was an amount that's due from fiduciary funds, which is a longer-term receivable, so not available to pay for the current expenditures shortly after the balance sheet date. So the next category is restricted, and so again, I've said it a couple of times already, but restricted. So that was if there was money that the city received that had strings attached, so from third party or by legislation saying like, hey, this these funds are only to be used for this purpose. You see more restrictions in the special revenue funds, because that's the nature of those funds. It's special revenue to be used for special purposes. So you will have more restrictions as a rule in your special revenue funds. Typically, you don't see a ton of restrictions in the general fund, because it's the general fund is supposed to, the monies that come into the general fund are supposed to be used for general city purposes. So the next 2 categories are discretionary by council and by management. So these 2 are called committed and assigned, and they're essentially sort of the same thing. It's, hey, we want to set money aside these purposes. Now, one is actually much more formal than the other. In order to commit a piece of fund balance, that has to be done by council and either by resolution or by ordinance. So you can say, hey, at the end of every year, we're going to commit 25% of the remaining fund balance as a policy, and that will be on this committed line item. You can only uncommit that fund balance with a similar act. So, a resolution to spend that money, or an ordinance or something like that. So, assigned works pretty much the same way, except it's not as formal. This can be just, management can give me a spreadsheet and say, hey, we're assigning this amount from our fund balance for these specific things. And I did bring up I don't know if you guys have copies of the financial statement there, but it was note 14 on page 86 of the ACFR. It does have where you can see how things are sort of what they're restricted for, what they're committed for, what they've been committed for, and what they've been assigned for. So not a ton by way of commitments or assignments, and no commitments actually in the general fund. But it's something that you could look at when you're moving forward, if you're establishing a reserve policy or something like that. But again, if you put it into committed fund balance, that's going to take an active council to commit it and to uncommit it. So most places will typically just assign things that they're again, depending on what their policy is, can delegate that to the city manager or the finance director to come up with what those assignments of fund balance would be. And then unassigned is just everything that's left just goes into that bucket.
Okay, so I recall the number was 24 million was unassigned fund.
Yeah, it's almost 25 million, 24.9.
Okay, so that, and for the guy off the street, would that be money it's there, it just hasn't been spent, it's sitting in the bank somewhere?
Let's see, I mentioned, so it's not necessary, at June 30, it's not necessarily all in the bank. However, and I'm going to pull up the general fund here. The general fund does have, let's see. So the general fund has $32 million of assets, and it was about 24.7 million in actual cash at June 30. The rest is basically in receivables, so it would be converted to cash at some point. So accounts receivable, taxes, interest, leases receivable, and then some amounts due from some of the other city funds. So in that case, yeah, I mean, it's essentially all cash. Obviously, you're gonna have to pay your outstanding June 30 liabilities, accounts payable, salaries, etc. But essentially, your actual cash balance in the general fund is actually pretty close to what is in that unassigned fund balance amount. It's a little less.
So enlighten me on, I've sat through the number of these over the years, and the common statement about revenues and expenses is the city's not supposed to make money. It seems like when they got 24 million of assets sitting around that they haven't even spent, that they are making money, and that doesn't seem to flow with it's been stated literally, I believe that's like California law. They can't make money, but it seems like that they certainly are in this case.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can, and lots of cities do, and they will actually they will have budgetary reserves built up. They'll have contingency reserves built up. I mean, and then also considering that the general fund is the number one fund, obviously to subsidize other funds when they need it. So transfers out for big capital projects into the capital projects fund, because the capital projects fund doesn't really have much of its own revenue. It really relies on transfers in and stuff. So it is good to have that. I know what where you're going with that. Like, are we overtaxing? But that's not necessarily for the city to worry. I mean, besides your half-cent sales tax, but the rest of that stuff is coming in from property tax and sales tax, sales tax and stuff. So this is just a good. Again, I don't look at this and see that the city has been overtaxing, especially considering the city's history, where the general fund was negative not that long ago. So this is good. And I don't, again, we don't offer an opinion on whether or not this is this is like a managerial sort of thing. But I think that the city's is in a healthy spot in the general fund with that unassigned fund balance amount, and it does not give me any feelings one way or the other about overtaxing the city's making too much money, et cetera. You will be needing this money for something at some point.
Okay.
Mr. Roger,
That's
just
helpful.
to explain this a little bit further, excuse me, Mr. Neal.
Sure.
Yeah, that 24 million, you have to remember that about 6 million of that is Measure P that is set aside for the down payment of the pool. You do have an amount from Measure V that's in there. And remember, we did budget Measure V reserves for our road projects this year. So that started July 1st. Remember, this is a snapshot from June 30th of 2024, the end of FY '24. So a lot of that money's already been accounted for when it comes for this year's budget and the road projects that we've been doing throughout the year. So do we still have 24 million? No, some of that's been spent. Some of that will be spent as a down payment on the pool. So you get down to about 15 million in our unassigned general fund reserve. That's kind of the misleading part of this is the way we do our books, the way we have to do it with the Measure V and the Measure P and the promise to the community. That's all separated on a spreadsheet. That's all accounted for during those committees.
Yeah,
Sure,
Mike.
thank you.
I would comment, if you got 15 million, you haven't managed to figure out how to spend, buy another slurry machine and hire some more guys and get some more road work done, because we got slurry stuff that's been done 5 years ago that's now starting to fall apart, which is the way it's supposed to work.
Not to debate the issue, but like I said, when I took over as city manager close to 8 years ago, we had $380,000 in reserve. Right now, we have probably 65% of our general fund expenditures in reserves, which is where we should be as a city to prepare for any sort of emergencies or contingencies or things that are unseen.
Somewhere,
So for me,
somewhere
this-
around 6 months, right, Ron?
Yeah, the general rule is that you should have about 6 months in reserves. I know there's a lot of communities, if you go out on the websites out there's a new state website that talks about the health of cities, and you start looking at what the ratio of what healthy cities should have in their reserves, and it's 6 months. There's a lot of cities out there that will have 100%, 150% of their expenditure in reserves, which makes them a healthy city. For us, I think we're in a good position. Like I said, that $24 million number is kind of a misnomer that, we have put some money aside to put a down payment on the pool so we can reduce our debt service, which reduce the cost to our citizens overall, so. And of course, all this money is sitting in a interest-bearing account, so we're earning money on the money as it's sitting there.
Cool. Thank you for your comments, Mike. And,
So in taking that into consideration, then the amount we have in reserves would cover us for how long?
Probably 7 months.
About 7 months.
Yeah.
And so in comparison to other cities and like-sized cities that are in good financial status, how do you rank Ridgecrest as are we in?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah, he's just putting you on the spot, Coley.
No, I mean, are we?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, we don't offer an opinion on financial health. However, this is a good ratio, and especially considering where the city has been, and so in the incremental progress that has been made in this, I do think that the general fund looks fine.
Good. That's my consensus too. But all right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anything else from the council? No? Anything else from the public? Okay, great. I really appreciate your time, Coley. And Kelly, thank you for the hard work. It is a lot of work. I know Cherie kind of, she handed it off to you. I think you've done very well. And I know that with a few just passing conversations with Ron, he said you've done excellent picking up the mantle and moving with things. So I appreciate that. And I think we have a lot of the we have the status for where we're at today due to the staff. You are a large part of that. Ron, thank you for making sure that we're within our means and doing what we're supposed to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Coley.
You bet. So we can move on beyond presentations onto public comments of items not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the council on matters that are within the council's jurisdictions and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Council will not respond to any public comments, but they may provide direction to staff to collect information. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not act on an item that does not appear on this agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. Are there any public comments for items that are not on the agenda in the public here on the floor?
Good evening once again, Mike Neal. Several items of comment. Here we are a few months after the last election season, but we may still have some action going on local election-wise. Just to inform the public, Mr. Blades sits on the council having run for a 4-year seat, knowing that he could only be there for 3 years. Now, I will ask about this, and I was told there were comments made apprising people of that fact. What I saw was not totally clear, but anyway, that's the basis, the point of the fact in that matter. What's very interesting is if you been around here for a while and you know people, and you talk to people involved in such things, and as far as the court case that was actually heard in Kern County Superior Court over this, the gentleman who brought that, Mr. Wicknich, because he felt in principle that this was not right, not totally transparent to the public, I guess. He went to court over it. Well, who did he see in court? Had his first hearing, he saw Mr. Strand and the city attorney, which was a private party court suit, not this suit was not filed against the city. Yet we had city personnel attending the hearing. About a week later, another hearing. At this one, it was reported that Mr. Strand, the city attorney, and the deputy city manager all were there. I asked about whether the city attorney made any charges based on this. I got not a totally clear answer, so I'm not sure if it was a complete denial that the city attorney had charged anything for his time, but it's hard to see how, a $400-something an hour lawyer is going to donate probably about 2 days at a time to attending a private party's court hearing. So that's interesting, to say the least. The next subject, go back to Place Area I, the subject of long debate ever since it was approved. Sorry to see that Mayor Endicott is not here. I'll make sure, I recommend that he listen to my comments. People don't like their privacy invaded. They don't like metadata being snooped on, at least those who understand what it's all about. And let it be said that you got the metadata, you got the man, or you got the woman. You know who they are. You don't have to look very far into a piece of metadata to figure out who it belongs to. It's also been reported by persons attending meetings on the base that there have been meetings by NCIS addressing Place Area I being used in Ridgecrest, and that this is a danger to security personnel, security of the personnel on the base. In one of these meetings, it's been reported that Mr. Strand was highlighted as one of the individuals involved. I have a FOIA request in to find out the details about that. One last thing quickly. Apparently, in 2022, there was a car accident. Best I could tell, probably a police officer started to make a U-turn, probably going to go after somebody, hit an individual. This kind of thing is not put out there generally. I certainly didn't see anything about it. I don't get the DI, I never will, but I don't believe it was in there. They can tell me otherwise. But basically, it was on French Avenue. The car was pulled into by a police officer doing a U-turn. They were damaged. 2 years later, of course, that's about how long it takes to get a court case settled. There's a settlement agreement stating that the settlement between the plaintiff, Clint Finley, and the city of Ridgecrest, that the police officer itself, that the city ended up having to pay $1.125 million in damages. So that's a very expensive mistake on the part of the officer, I guess. That's basically what the city's agreeing to. They did not have finished court hearing-wise. They made a settlement. So I'm sure the current chief is going to make sure all his officers don't do these kind of things or run into citizens in the public. But I think really we ought to have transparency in matters like this, especially when it costs over $1 million to our taxpayers, and the information ought to be put out. And guys like me shouldn't be the ones coming up here having to kind of let it out to the public.
Martin, do you want to respond to that?
Just briefly, thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council members. Just a couple of clarifications. First of all, the accident was an unfortunate mishap. It did not involve any of our police officers. It was another employee. Secondly, yes, the settlement amount is a large amount, but I would remind council that that's why we carry insurance. That amount of money was paid out minus $100,000 deductible by our insurance company.
Thanks, Martin. Anything on the phone? Oh, one more from the floor. Yeah, please do.
My name is Alexander Gross. I would just like to voice to the council my concern that if the federal hiring freeze continues for a long period of time, this may have a significant effect on the city of Ridgecrest's population of taxable citizens and may impact the city's finances in a negative way. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Okay, now we'll go to the phones. Lights are red, so I'm not seeing anything. Okay, we'll move on to, anything else? Okay, move on to council announcements and direction. Mr. Gorman.
I have none.
None here?
Okay, Solomon, you don't have anything? No. All right. Then we can move on to the consent calendar. All items are listed on consent are considered to be routine and non-controversial by city staff. Consent items may be approved by one motion if no member of the council or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the city council concerning the item before action is taken. I will now read the one consent item. Proposed action to approve draft minutes of the Ridgecrest City Council regular meeting dated March 5th, 2025. Does anybody on the council wish to have this pulled? Nope. Is there any member of the public that wishes to have the minutes pulled? Seeing none, hearing none, I will ask for an approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Blades,
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Mr. Heyman,
Aye.
Mr. Gorman.
Aye.
We have 4 ayes with 1 absent. Motion carries.
Thank you, Rika. Move on to discussion and action items. Number 2, discussion regarding the board of the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Mr. Heyman, if you can take it away.
Thanks, sir. The Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority did meet last Wednesday on March 12th, and I will go over the highlight of the agenda items, beginning with item number 9 was a professional services agreement with Regional Government Services. That was just an annual renewal of their services. Actually was a few months less because we'd authorized a temporary short-term in last fall, but so it's just a continuation of the 1-year Regional Government Services contract. And that was approved by the board. Item number 10 was the board review and potential action on the periodic evaluation. That was a 5-year periodic update. And so that was approved and will be forwarded to DWR. Item number 11 was the board to receive and file the 2024 water year annual report. And so that was received and filed. And then item number 12 was Provost and Pritchard change order for rare plant survey. basically that entailed Southern California Edison will be supplying the power to the interconnection pipeline project, imported water pipeline project. And so in their review, they found that they will need an additional 4.3 miles of pipeline direction, or not pipeline direction, but a power transmission to the power going to the pump stations, two of the pump stations. And so with that, that will involve more CEQA review. And so there was an additional $20,000 allotted to Provost and Pritchard for that study, for plant study, which was kind of interesting because it has to be done at a certain time in the spring, March and April, when the plants are coming alive and it can be counted and assessed. So, but anyway, so that was approved. Item number 13 was amendment number 1 to reimbursement agreement with Antelope Valley East Kern. That was an extension to an agreement with AVAC, and also an additional $75,000 for them to continue their survey and planning for the interconnect between the Cal City water supply that they would be providing to the imported water pipeline project. So, so that extension was approved and the monies were approved. And that ends my report, so I'll bring it back to the council for any questions or comments.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. Gorman, do you have any comments or questions? No. Solomon, you have anything?
One question, Councilman Heyman. So GSP is reviewed and already submitted now? 5-year review? 5-year review of the GSP is completed, right?
Yes.
So can we send any amendments if we need to after that, or?
Sure can. So if there's anyone, say, it's been, brought up numerous times, like with the water district, because one of the reasons we were kind of holding back was to give them a little more time to, bring a model or any other additional input they may have. But anytime, even after the 5-year update has been sent in, an addendum can be made at any time. So new data from whether it's from the water district or from some other source can be brought in. So,
thank you.
yes.
Well, thanks, Solomon. You kind of grabbed one of my questions, and that was just because that's been a note of contention, right? I want to make sure that there is a fair process, and I believe, man, that's loud. I believe that sorry, it's like I'm inside the microphone.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I want to make sure there was a fair process for how that's working out, and so the Groundwater Authority is totally okay with stuff going either. I'm assuming, I recall, things go through the TAC, right? Is that how that looks? Like if there's new data to present, goes to the TAC.
I believe, yeah, the TAC would look at it, and probably water resource managers, staff, the staff of the GA. So I think it'd be looked at by all parties that are involved in the GSP.
Just as an example, the water district, for some time now, has been promising their new water model. Last court hearing, it was revealed that the water model is not currently complete, and that was based upon a statement made by Meadowbrook's attorney April 21st of next month. They have another court hearing where they'll once again have the ability to produce their model. Once that model's produced, obviously, the GA is going to take a look at it and make the determination of what it actually says. And I don't think anybody's going to turn down good information that might, show what our true sustainable yield is. So at that point in time, we can look at it. But right now, all the promises that have been made by the water district that they have a model have not been produced yet. They've got a hypothesis that has not been proven. So when you refer back to the 5-year plan, it's hard to include that data when it's a hypothesis, when there's no model that's been produced. We've been told that their PhD that was hired to review the model quit. And so apparently they're looking to find somebody else to be able to review that data to be able to make it to where it is presentable. So that's where we sit with that.
Yeah. So Scott, I have a few other, sorry, Councilman Hayman. I have a few other questions. I slowed down on all my question asking for a while, but now that we have, we have Mayor Endicott on here, and these questions need to be brought back up. And if I get asked questions in the public, that means people are wondering the same thing. So has the Groundwater Authority, and if you don't know like these, that's okay. It's fair to say, hey, I'm not quite sure what the answer is, and we can always get back with the staff of the Groundwater Authority. Has the Groundwater Authority done any analysis on how much it will cost for for the recycled water option? And to I understand it, that's not just to a tertiary level, that's also to a beyond tertiary level. Are you aware, or has anything been presented in public?
Yes, at one of the previous Groundwater Authority meetings, there was an analysis that was presented showing the cost of the recycled water, the cost of treating it, the cost of injection wells and pipe infrastructure. And so the cost is based on what we're seeing right now is pretty cost prohibitive. It brought the price up, including, I believe it included the operational expenses too, but close to $10,000 an acre foot. So in the water district, I will say, had done a look at it a while back. It's been some time ago, and found that, the costs were substantial.
Right, and I was just watching one of the most recent water district meetings, and they did say pretty firmly a few things. And this comment section isn't about the water district, but since we're talking about the Groundwater Authority, and the thrust and the direction of the Groundwater Authority is at opposition with one of its members, the water district. And the water district did state pretty plainly that they will not be a part of any of the study of the injection or anything to do with the pipeline whatsoever. So has there been conversation, you can't speak about closed session, but open session with the Groundwater Authority, needing to now do that study and now look into that same work if the water district's not going to do it?
Are you asking if the water district isn't going to pursue, like, one of the comments they've made is, let me preempt that and just state that the city did meet with the water district last week? Last Thursday. And so the mayor, myself, city manager Ron Strand met with the water district and their board members, David St. Amand, Ron Kaczynski, and their general manager, George Kroll. And so in regards to the recycled water project, it was brought up, that, they were, interested in that water. That they had brought it to the city council a while back, and we did explain to them that with the contract that we had, that it was to be, the proper channel would be to go, before the GA and say, hey, we got a project, we want to, look at that water. But they said they didn't want to spend, the monies to look at the studies. And so it was brought up to them that, well, maybe the GA could look at, doing a study that would, entail looking at, once the water's here, where's it going to go? How would that look for, the water district? What'd be the best, ways to bring that water into the system? And we were basically stonewalled.
Sure. Okay.
So on one hand,
it's just my overarching question. It's one of the natural questions. If I see them say, hey, we're not going to be a part of this, but that's the main core thrust of where the GA is going, we have agreed with the way the GA is going for our part, then that means that this work's going to have to be done. So I'm guessing the GA is going to have to do that, take over those duties?
Well, I think it's the GA's goal is to see a water sustainability of this valley, and so we continue to move forward with the import water project. And
I would just be interested in what those conversations look like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I promise, Martin, I'll wrap this up soon. I had a few nagging questions. I understand. And so how are we on acquiring AVEC water? Or
that
is it still
process is ongoing.
Okay.
We just approved that extension. They're looking at their infrastructure and how they could provide that water. And we continue to work on the purchase process of purchasing water.
Okay. And that deal, I know that we said it last meeting, that with the Groundwater Authority, we have until November, right? And we're gonna have to make another decision to, extend whether the water goes to the Groundwater Authority or not,
In
our
regards to
recycled water.
Recycled water.
Yeah, okay, so I guess that brings up another question off the top of my head. Has there been any discussion on the Groundwater Authority about other uses for that secondary water?
Sure, they've
I
looked
mean,
at.
because there's a water budget, right? If we're helping the water budget out somewhere.
Right, and, they've looked at best practical uses of that water and looking at where it could be used most effectively and at the cost of using that water most effectively.
Okay, awesome. I feel like I had a few more questions. Maybe I'll come back to it. So for the discussion, if there's nothing else for the council, then we can push it out to the public. Are there any questions from the public for Mr. Heyman?
Right, Neil. So much to address and only 5 minutes to do it in. Isn't that nice for citizens? I trust that all of you got the emails I sent out that had references to the hydrology studies the Water District has had done that has shown on average between the three studies that there's over 13,000 acre-feet of recharge into the basin, as opposed to the long-held 7650 by the GA, maybe it's 7850. I trust you also looked at the study that they paid their money to have done, looking at how much the pipeline and all the attendant costs were going to cost the citizens of the valley. If you didn't get those, please raise your hand and I'll send them to you again. If you did, I sure wish you'd look at them. The study looking at the cost to the citizenry of the pipeline with its infrastructure, with its O&M, all the costs is basically, you could certainly count on on paying twice as much for water as you are now, more likely 3 times as much. If that doesn't strike you as concerning, then I guess you have an opinion that most of the citizens in your city have quite a nice income. I don't know anybody who wants to pay 3 times more for their water, but so be that as it is. As far as the recycled water, it makes total sense for the Water District not to plunge ahead with the study until they know they're going to have access to the water. It's been volleyballed back and forth. All the city has to do is say, hey, we'd like to terminate the contract with the GA so we can get on with this. But, they're playing, oh, he needs to do it, he needs to do it. So it doesn't happen, and it looks to be, they don't want it to happen for whatever reason. So there you go. Let me just read you a post. Sorry, got to get the full wording here. March 3rd post by the city of Ridgecrest on behalf of the IWVGA. I've read this here before. I read one similar because there have been 2 similar to this. This is addressing Searles Valley Minerals lawsuit against the GA. It makes it out like they want to get the GSP, which has been publicly available. What they want is access to the model that the Navy has developed, that the Navy has consistently refused to let out to the public. So they're saying that Searles Valley is using lawsuits to delay our water future. For some reason, Searles Valley Minerals wants to mess up the future of water use in the valley. They don't say why. And then they try to claim that the Groundwater Authority, they're being sued because Groundwater Authority is withholding public information. They say, oh, that's false. Our GSP has been available for years. Well, they didn't want the GSP. They've had it. They want access to this model. So then they go into the last paragraph of this post. This proves very interesting, the wording they use. It says, these tactics are meant to stall the solution we desperately need, importing water to the basin before it runs dry. Now, if that isn't what I classically call scare baby tactic, I don't know what is. Making statements like that to make people get up in arms, say, oh, help us, we don't want to die of thirst. That's not even very mature as far as I'm concerned. That just shuts the issue. Yeah. And the point is, when you look at a problem like this, particularly when you have decades to actually solve the problem, they don't charge in and say, well, we like this one idea, and that's all we're ever going to look at. At present, there are 2 potential sources of more water for this basin that I was just made aware of. You look at all the options before you charge into something that's going to make all your citizens, every single one of them, we all drink and use water, pay 3 times more for the use of that water. You look at all your options. There are still options on the table. The recycled water could cost more than $2,000 an acre foot, but quite possibly not. And that makes it a viable source. There's actually 3. If you include that one, there are 3, which would push us well over the recharge we need into this basin. So the GA needs to stop with those kind of, have the city, I don't know what a city does, posts like that. Let's be mature and let's explore the issues at hand.
Anything else from the floor? Or anything on the phone? No? Okay. Mr. Heyman or Mr. Strand, do you want to respond to any of that?
I have no comment.
Okay. Yeah. All right, we can move on. Well, no, let's see. Hold on, I took a few notes while you were talking, Mike. The first thing is, I can't speak for the council. I can only speak for myself. Whereas I may personally not have always worded some of those announcements the way they were, I'm glad that the information is getting out to the public. There has long been a cry for more information. And I think the more information we're pushing out to the public, the better. I can tell you that the issues were presented to me when I first got on this council in December of 2019. I had a steady stream of folks approaching me from every side. Everybody you can possibly imagine was coming out of the woodworks when I was brand new on the council to talk to me about where they thought this was going, where they thought water was going, give me their opinions. I made the very best assessment that I possibly could by talking to everybody that I could, and I can tell you that the issues were concerning to me then, and they're concerning to me now, and I think it's more of just be honest to the public. Hey, there is a tried and true model. To my knowledge, that model was produced before there was this kind of tension. It's a model that the Navy prefers. I don't think, well, I can't say anything about the Navy, but I can say that's what they use. And I don't think anybody's looking for less water. So I like the idea that information is getting out to the public. That's important. So the more information, the better. Let's see. I look forward to, so if the Water District does, if that model comes out and the Groundwater Authority can do some analysis, or I would even suggest having a third party look and make sure that that's all vetted, right? Make sure that the data's good. I mean, most people in this valley love data, right? So the more data, the better. So I think that the more we can, every model has to be certified. Anytime I've been a part of any kind of data analysis on any project, the model itself has to be certified, and everybody, I think, understands that. So even the people at the Water District. So I'm sure that'll end up playing out. I don't want to see this basin crash. I don't think anybody does. And so I think if that's the direction we need to take right now, that the GA is taking, then that's what we take, because that's the most reasonable, that's the data that we have in front of us, and that's the most reasonable solution, and that's what we do. So this is my way of telling you, Scott, I appreciate what you've done on the board. I know it's not an easy position, but you've picked up the mantle, and you've stood strong, and I appreciate your work. If there's no other comments from the public, I'm going to go ahead and move on. I don't see anything on the phone either. Okay, on to committee reports. Committee meetings, dates are subject to change and will be announced on the city website. So next meeting for economic is April 7th. The finance committee, so a report from March 11th. Solomon or Scott, do you want to take that?
So Finance Committee did meet. Everything is looking pretty good. The revenue update with the Measure P, Measure V, the TOT, and the taxes. The funds all look pretty close, and so we're sitting good there. The we had an investment update. The investments are all doing, I think well in the big picture of current interest rates. Part of the discussion was with the CAFR, which was a big part of tonight's discussion, so I don't have to go into that because I think everybody got a very good presentation tonight.
Very good presentation.
The state of the city finances right now are, I think, very, very good. The best we've been, I think, in years, and what was brought up a couple times in the report that years back we were sitting in a very negative position. So for us to have revenues and be sitting in a secure financial state right now is a lot to be said. That can be, taken right to the finance department, our city manager, for all their hard work that they've done to put us in this position. They've done a great job, and so I'm proud to be on that finance committee and to see the results of where you've brought us to today. So, Solomon, do you have anything you want to add?
You covered everything. Good job.
Okay. Infrastructure Committee will meet March the 27th. Parks and Rec, April 1st. City Org report from March 6th. So I think it's going to be Mr. Gorman, that's you.
I'm pleased to say the City Org Committee, the reconstituted City Org Committee, which in my mind I think of now as the Blight Committee, because as we meet, that's what we were going to discuss. And we had a bit of a stream of consciousness on the issue of blight, and I found out, somewhat to my dismay, the people here in this building tend to be altogether too practical, because they set about where I wanted an academic view of blight over the rest of the year. They set about solving the blight problem one spot at a time during that first meeting. And that's not exactly what I wanted, but I sat back and let it all happen, and we learned some things, at least I did. And I think that for the next meeting, aside from having a guest speaker who I haven't decided upon yet, and that'll help focus the next issue, I want to go deeper into some of the issues. I'll give you an example. Talking around blight, it turns out that the extent to which Ridgecrest is or is not a charter city makes a difference to our vulnerability to blight and the extent to which we address it. I'd like to learn a lot more about that. City manager sitting right next to me seems to know a lot, and we invite him to the next meeting to at least lean forward and explain that in greater detail. By the way, what two types of cities are there? There's a charter city and a
General law city.
general law city. By the way, that was a very good article in the newspaper about the committee meeting. You take good notes. So it was, if you want to know more details, snag that last issue of the DI. Our friend wrote a good article about it. And since other committees and boards is the next topic, I'll just fall right onto it.
Beautiful segue.
Good segue. Last week I drove through the storm up, down Highway 395 in the rain. Spooked me all the way. That's a dangerous highway. We went to Victorville and participated in a subset of the League of California Cities, that is the desert/mountain division, which consists of, I don't know, around 15 cities that are on this side of the Sierra Nevadas. And we sat, 30 people sat around a large table in the voluminous City Hall in Victorville, and got to listen to each other talk about some issues which I think are transcendent in how much there was. I mean, my goodness. The thing that impressed me the most was that In-N-Out Burger is just 2 blocks away from that building. And by God, I had lunch. That's it. That's all I got to report, those 2 meetings. And I pass it back.
Thank you, Skip. Appreciate that. I don't believe there's any other boards or commissions, so we can move on to city manager report. Or I guess I should have asked, anybody have any questions for Skip? No? Okay, sorry. Mr. Strand.
Yes, do a pool update. As you know, we received our pool bond funding. That's currently in a managed third-party account. Until such time as it's needed, it'll be in a interest-bearing account, which at this point in time is gaining more interest than we're paying. So we're pretty much in a neutral spot. We have a call with our developer on Friday to start getting the bid packet ready. We've had a couple of things we've been working on in the meantime. We had to secure a title report, which apparently is necessary for the bid documents, as well as we're trying to resolve our Title 24 solar issue. It looks like we might have an opportunity to be able to update our current solar field, get it back up to where it was at when we installed it, because right now it's going on 16 years old, it's end of life. So we're looking at the ability of maybe being able to take that funding we would have had to put towards the solar at the pool to offset the energy cost to save us on our O&M, and be able to update our park at the same time and be able to reduce our electric bill we have for City Hall and the Kerr-McGee Center. So we're currently working on that with our engineering firm. We're getting pretty close to coming to an answer on that. And so we're hoping to be able to get this thing out to bid as soon as we can. So that was the old thing of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, being able to reduce our electrical costs for the city, as well as be able to take care of our electrical costs for the pool when it's in operation, because obviously the less we have to pay on our O&M is the less we have to subsidize. So that's where we're at. It's all what we found, it's all the fine details at the very end that they come up that you're unaware of until they say, oh, by the way, you need to hire a Title 24 commissioner. Oh, by the way, you need to get your title report. Now we have to, file with the local company to be able to get it. So it's just the small details, but it's still moving forward.
Well, I hate to admit it out loud, but you kind of told us a lot of this was going to pop up before me and Mayor Bruin pushed back on you to change things. So just make sure I admit that in public.
We're gonna have a great pool for the community.
Yes, we will.
Unfortunately, we're developing a public project which has public obstacles that get in the way.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Thank you. So, any future agenda items from the council?
Then
All right, we'll move on to mayor and council comments. Mr. Gorman.
Councilman, thank you. That was a breath of fresh air, the questions about the Groundwater Authority and the Water District getting together, having a meeting. By the way, who called the meeting?
It was between staff members. Ron and George talked it out and decided that, it was good to get people together. And I think that it would be even more would be encouraged. We did it before, but usually what happens is the lawsuit gets in the way and, tense.
Yeah.
Sometimes things get tense, and so
I think
back away.
basically Ron and I and Kyle, we have met with them in the past, and so this is a continuation of trying to continue that.
I
And
thank
so,
you,
yeah, so
and
it
I
came from the same,
seriously
you know, the same.
and passionately urge you to continue having those meetings. Don't get dismayed because you don't make immediate,
We left it with,
Motion.
we left that meeting with the tentative scheduling of another meeting. I believe, well, we're going to wait until after the Federal Reserve trial, and that way we'll have a little more to chew on and give them time. You know, in the meeting, there was, you know, other things discussed that they can go back and maybe talk with their board, or, you know, so it gives everybody time to kind of digest what was discussed at the meeting, and then we'll meet again.
I'll help in any way I can.
You and me both. Anything else, Skip? No? Scott?
No comments, or no future agenda items?
Well, no, just anything for your council
the council.
comments?
No.
Awesome, thanks, Solomon. Yeah, it's all you, man.
Thank you. Last meeting, I asked about body cams, and Chief has updated me. I appreciate that update, that body cams are up and running, so that's great. See,
Oh, man,
he has them. So
if we have a minute, Chief, can you come up here and get on camera and show us that?
I think that would be great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Solomon, but I think, I didn't notice it until you pointed it out, and I look over, and he's got one on his
Yeah.
chest. So,
Oh, yeah, wow.
yeah, look at that.
Yeah, you gotta
Use
do
your
the
best judgment.
The 360.
be a van of
Film everybody.
Yeah, but you know, like all, I know we're being lighthearted, but I mean, this is a significant investment from the community, and I appreciate you bringing it. So,
I got it.
awesome. Chief, could you give us a little rundown?
Sorry. Okay, you got it. I'll stop, because we keep turning on and off, going back and forth. All right, I'll try it now.
We'll let the
I
boss
got it.
control things. That'll probably make things better. The body cameras have been up and running for the last few days. We did some troubleshooting. We couldn't have gotten them up this quickly without the help of the IT department. They were instrumental in getting the right cables run to have downloads happen effectively. So we're very appreciative of all they did. They pretty much dropped everything to get this project going once we had the hardware in. It'll still take us a few months to get the cars up and running because it's a big project to do each car. But every officer on patrol now goes out with their cameras. And I can tell you that we've had success with them already with some of the incidents that have happened on the street and our ability to play back that footage to help community members understand the dynamics of what we do and explain why we do things with our ability to review the incidents ourselves. So we're grateful to the council for supporting this project as well as the community. Folks came out and gave us their feedback. We took that feedback to the council, and the council supported this project, and we continue to be appreciative of that.
Yeah, and your officers have been through some amount of training.
Yes, they've all been trained on how to use them. Anytime they're on an incident where there's likelihood of conflict or a call for service, the cameras are running. The cameras don't get muted on calls. We have nothing to hide. It's all recorded. If we have to have discussions on the side, we don't do anything that's secret. It'll all be recorded. We're open to continued transparency. We're glad the cameras are here. Great feedback from the officers as well. They're very happy that the cameras are here.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I mean, I want to say our police department, they provide great service as of now. This is an additional tool to increase their quality of service. And it puts responsibility not only on the police department, but also on the public, because there is no way something, it's like you said, she said, it's all gone now, so.
That is a great benefit to the cameras. And I think everybody behaves better when they're being recorded across the board. So I think it'll benefit the community in many ways. Thanks again
Right,
for your
sir. Thank
support
you,
on that
sir.
project.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
I have one more.
Yeah, no, please.
No.
Didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
So, no. Thank you, Chief. Yeah. On behalf of the City Council, I think I can say this on behalf of the City Council. I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to the family of Pat Farris, who has been a pillar of this community and a matriarch of Farris family. She passed away at the age of 94, and most of you know her. So she has served this community unselfishly, got involved in so many issues and stood for what is right for this community. So I deeply regret her demise, and I'm sure she is with the Lord, and my condolences to the family of Pat Ferris. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Solomon. And on that same note, there was just recently services for Mr. Dave Campbell. And that was another huge loss to the community. So I'm sure everybody's aware, but thought I'd make mention of it. I have no further council comments, so if there's nothing else from anybody here, then